This month, we're going to talk about something. We have Christmas coming around. There's hope, there's joy, there's peace. Christmas, it smells like hot chocolate. There's candy canes. It's an awesome time, and it's beautiful. But this week, today, this morning, we're going to talk about how do you bring something that everybody needs. So in Christmas, you're bringing presents. People may have a Christmas list. You're bringing something that somebody needs according to their Christmas list. But this morning, something that we are going to bring, it's on every single person's Christmas list. Whether they know it or not, everybody needs it, and we're going to teach you how to bring it. So first, you got to figure out what we're bringing, and you got to know who you're bringing it to. So have you guys ever been in a situation, whether if it's a physical place or if it's a person, and it's just sad? Like you go to that person, they're just sad. Or maybe like you go to this place and it's just sad. You can feel bad vibes. There's no hope. There's no joy. Maybe they're stressing out. There's no peace. Maybe that's school. Maybe that's what school feels like. It's just sad and depressing and stressful. Maybe there's a certain person that you hang out with and it's always just bad vibes. There's no hope. They're never joyful. They're never excited. Maybe it's the Walmart in the candy aisle. I don't know. But whatever that place is with you, whether if it's a certain person, a family member, a neighbor, or if it's a physical place at home, a neighbor's house, at school, here at church, whatever it is, and if it's dealing with hopelessness, there's no joy, it's sad, it's full of anxiety and there's stressful, there's something that you can bring to deal with that situation. Or maybe it's you and yourself. Maybe instead of trying to give it to somebody else, you need it yourself. You need somebody to bring it to you. Maybe you're dealing with hopelessness, there's no joy, you're always sad, maybe stressing out, full of anxiety. Maybe that's something that you need this morning. So whatever it is, whether you need it personally or there's somebody in your life or place in your life that you can bring it to, this is what we can bring. And this is the story of Jonah. Raise your hand if you ever heard of the name Jonah before in the Bible. Right? You guys may have heard it from VeggieTales. The story of Jonah. VeggieTales is, I'm not going to lie to you. When I was preparing this sermon, I thought of the story of Jonah. I was like, dude, I haven't read the story of Jonah in like 5 years. VeggieTales taught me everything I needed to know. But it missed out on a lot of details. VeggieTales missed out on a lot of details. So I would encourage you, Jonah, it's only 4 chapters. When you get a minute, read the story of Jonah because VeggieTales missed out on some details. But if you never read the story of Jonah, recap, this is what it is. This guy named Jonah, and he was a prophet, and God tells Jonah, hey, I want you to go to this place called Nineveh. And Jonah's like, hey, I don't want to go to Nineveh. So he runs away from God and doesn't go to Nineveh. And long story short, he gets on this boat, there's a big storm, and people on the boat are like, man, who made God mad? What's happening? Jonah's like, hey, I did because I ran away from God. They throw Jonah in the water, a big fish eats up Jonah and spits him out, and then he goes to Nineveh. Does that kind of sound like the story of Jonah? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought too. But, so here's a quick history lesson real quick about Nineveh. So Nineveh was the place that God instructed Jonah to go. And here's a quick history lesson for you. Nineveh was the most important city in Assyria, and it would soon become the capital of the Assyrian Empire. So Nineveh was pretty important. It was the most important capital of the Assyrian Empire, and it was a big military dominance. Big military dominance that conquered 10 tribes of Israel. And here's some descriptions from the book of Nahum. If you don't know what that is, that's like fast forward from the book of Jonah, like 2 books over. If you guys have, raise your hand if you ever heard of the book of Nahum, if you even knew that was in the Bible. There you go. Well, now you know Nahum is in the Bible. Here are just some descriptions that refers to Nineveh. It's an evil plot. They have evil plots against the Lord. They're taking advantage of the helpless. There's cruelty and war. There's idolatry, prostitution, and witchcraft. And that was all taking place before Jonah arrived. So that was Nineveh. It was wickedness. There was sin. There was no hope. There was no joy. There was no peace. And God didn't approve of Nineveh. God was like, hey, I need somebody to deal with Nineveh because it's not good. It's full of wickedness. There's sin. There is no hope. There is no joy. There is no peace. There's no faith. There's no goodness. There's absolutely nothing in Nineveh except for idolatry, prostitution, witchcraft, cruelty, and war, taking advantage of the helpless. So Nineveh was wicked. So if you have your Bibles, you can open up to Jonah chapter 3, verses 3 through 10. And that's where we're going to land at this morning. Jonah, it's in the Old Testament. If you need to whip out the table of contents, look it up. Jonah chapter 3, verses 3 through 10. So this was in chapter 3. This is after Jonah kind of ran away from God. He already got spit out by the fish. And this is Jonah now entering Nineveh. So Jonah, he gets thrown into the water, big fish eats him up, and he gets spit out. So this is where we're taking place this morning, starting in verse 3. I'll read you. So Jonah arose and went to Nineveh according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was exceedingly great city, 3 days' journey in breadth. And when it says exceedingly great, it's not talking about like all the wickedness that we just talked about. It's saying like, it's a beautiful place to look at. Physically appealing, it is a beautiful place to look at. And it takes like 3 days' journey to even see the whole place. So that's what it says. It's exceedingly great. And then picking up in verse 4. Potentially. There we go. Jonah began to go into the city, going a day's journey, and he called out. So this was the message that God gave Jonah to call out. 40, I can't even read. Yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. So that is the message that God gave Jonah, like before he ran away, before Jonah ran away. That's the message God gave Jonah. He told Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh and give them this message. And the message was, yet 40 days Nineveh shall be overthrown. Then the Ninevites believed God. So Jonah starts to go out. He's in Nineveh. He's traveling around for a day right now, and he starts proclaiming that message. Then in verse 5, the Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on a sackcloth or a burlap, picture like a Walmart bag, something over their head. Verse 6, when Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth or burlap, just a Walmart trash bag, over his head, and sat down in the dust. And this proclamation he issued in Nineveh, by the decree of the king and his nobles, do not let people or animals, herds or flocks taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink. So stopping there at verse 8. So far, Jonah goes into Nineveh. He's proclaiming the message that God gave him, which was in 40 days Nineveh will be overthrown. And what he means by that is Nineveh to be overthrown, God's judgment was coming. Because of all the wickedness that we talked about earlier, all that wickedness, the prostitution, the cruelty and war, the sin, God was not happy with that, so he has to judge it accordingly. And that message was like a, hey, heads up, by the way, in 40 days, Nineveh's going to be overthrown. It's going to be just complete washover. So that message reaches the king. So it went from the least person to the king. And the king says, hey, I'm gonna be obedient to that. And he says, picking up in verse 8, but let people and animals, even the animals, be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on God, and let them give up their evil ways and their violence. So even the king, so it started out Jonah just walking the streets, talking to the everyday people, and it reached the king. And remember, Nineveh was like a big deal. It wasn't just like a little baby king. It was the capital of the military empire. They were dominating, taking over tribes, so this was a big deal. So when it reached the king, it was a big deal. It wasn't just something laid back, but it was a big deal. And the king was like, let them give up, telling his people, let them give up their evil ways and their violence. Verse 9, who knows, God may yet relent with compassion, turn from his fierce anger, so that we will not perish. And then verse 10, when God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring them to destruction he had threatened. So you got this whole place, Nineveh. It was wicked. Jonah didn't want to go there the first time. He actually finally goes there. So Nineveh was a place with no hope, no faith, no joy, no peace. It was the complete opposite. It was sin. Nineveh was sin. And that same thing with you guys in your life. When I was saying earlier, if you had that person, if you had that place, or you are that person that is just filled with no hope, no peace, they're always anxious, they're always stressing out, it's wicked, maybe bad vibes, there's sin, whether that's you personally or a place that you've been at or a place that you continue to go to or people that you continue to meet. Everybody has a Nineveh in their life. Everybody has a Nineveh in their life. It may not be as big and crazy as this capital thing taking over military empires. It could just be your neighbor across the street. But regardless, the same principles apply. There's still no hope, there's no joy, there's no peace. So everybody has a Nineveh in their life. So now how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that Nineveh that they have in their life? First, you got to do what Jonah did. And what did Jonah do? Jonah went and proclaimed a message from God. And that message was our Sunday morning small groups that Jonah did. Just kidding. But Jonah went and proclaimed a message from God. So same thing with you guys. When you have your Nineveh in your mind, that person, that place, there is a message from God that you can proclaim. And look at the results of that. When you proclaim that message from God, look what happened. In verse 10, when God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring destruction that he had threatened. God forgave them. At the end of the chapter, going into chapter 4, it said that God had compassion towards them. And God forgave them. So that same thing applies to us. When we have people in our lives, and we want to bring them hope, because we're nice people, humans. We have this nice moral character, so when we see somebody hurting, we see somebody in pain, we see somebody sad, we want to help them. But how we help them, I think, is where we get it wrong. Because we like to give our opinion or our advice and not the gospel. We like to help them saying, oh, you feel sad, maybe go buy some clothes. We like to give our opinion towards people, towards places, and not the gospel. Right? What if Jonah walked into Nineveh and he just gave his opinion? He's like, hey, yeah, homie, you all suck, you're all sinning, yeah, good luck, there's no hope for you. What if Jonah just walked into Nineveh and just gave his opinion? But he did not do that. He proclaimed a message from God. And the results of that was compassion and forgiveness and salvation. Those results would not have happened if Jonah just proclaimed his opinion. Same thing with us in our life. When we're going to people, when we're going to places, and we're giving our advice or opinion. Our advice and our opinions can't save people. We're not Jesus, we're not God. We cannot give salvation to people. We can lead them in a certain direction. That direction needs to be the gospel. So when you're in a situation with people that are hopeless, I want you to bring hope. Not your opinion, not your advice, but bring hope. So if there's a situation, if there is a person in your life that was hopeless, or is hopeless today, or even if it's you right now in this moment, you're feeling hopeless, bring hope. Same thing with sadness. If you are sad, bring joy. If you are stressed out, bring peace. If they are wicked, then bring love. And this is why we bring God into that situation. This is why we proclaim a message from God. It's because Jesus is the cornerstone for our hope. Jesus is the source of our joy. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And God is love. Not our opinions. Our opinions are not the cornerstone of hope. Our advice is not love. Our advice is not a source of joy. Jesus is the only source of joy. Jesus is the only cornerstone of hope. God is the only person that is love, not what he does, but it is who he is. God is love. It says it in 1 John 4:8. So if you're here today in this moment and you're feeling hopeless, if you're feeling like you are your own personal Nineveh, there's a wickedness that you're dealing with, maybe God's been poking at you a little bit, trying to give you a warning, saying, hey, homie, I need you to deal with this. Today is that day to where not only you can bring it to other people, but you can bring it to yourself. You can confess those things. You can confess those things, and Jesus will come in. You will receive salvation, not because of somebody's advice or somebody's opinion, but by you in your heart saying, God, I want to deal with this. I am my own Nineveh. I'm my own wickedness that I want to deal with. Before you even spread it to other people, before you spread the gospel to other people and spread that joy and that hope, you personally want to receive it. So it starts with confessing that, saying, God, I want to give this to you. I'm done living this way. I'm tired. I'm always sad. I'm stressed out. I have no hope. I have no joy. And it just sucks. It feels like there's no way out, and it's like a rabbit hole that just keeps spiraling down into like a deep, dark pit, and you're like, man, there is no hope now. Well, Jesus is the cornerstone of our hope. Same thing when you're going into your school, when you're going home, when you're going to any physical place that just feels sad and you want to bring them joy, bring Jesus. Bring Jesus into that situation. Bring the gospel into that situation. Don't give your advice. Don't give your opinion. Give them the gospel and let God handle it. Give them the gospel, give them Jesus, and let God handle it. So recap, this is the one thing, if you don't get anything else from today, just get this. Bring Jesus. That's it right there. Just bring Jesus. Whether that's bringing Jesus to you personally through repentance, or if that's your brother, if that's your sister, if that's your mom, it's your dad, it's your teacher, it's your classmates, whatever it is, bring Jesus. Because when you bring Jesus, you're bringing everything else that he provides. You're bringing hope, you're bringing joy, you're bringing faith, you're bringing goodness, you're bringing love. You're bringing everything under the Jesus big umbrella. You're bringing all of that when you bring Jesus. You're covering all the bases. So whether that's for you personally or for people at your school, at your home, bring Jesus. Jesus. Let's pray.